Hello and welcome to Press TV's Top 5. I'm Marzia Hashemi. Thanks so much for being with us. Well, the death toll from Israel's airstrikes on the Gaza Strip is rising. At least 132 Palestinians have been killed since Israel began pounding the besieged territory on Tuesday. At least 24 Palestinians were killed in the latest Israeli airstrikes. Various locations were hit in Gaza City, as well as the cities of Rafah, Beit Lahia, and Beit Lahia. Most attacks targeted Gaza City, including one which hit Sheikh Radwan neighborhood. Elsewhere in the city, 2 mosques and a center for the disabled were also destroyed. Tel Aviv says it has struck more than 1,100 targets since Tuesday. More than 900 Palestinians have been injured so far. Tel Aviv is now preparing for a possible ground incursion. Israel's Minister for Military Affairs, Moshe Ya'alon, says the attacks will continue for several more days. You're looking at live images coming out of the Gaza Strip as we see the smoke plumes from another missile attack that we have been seeing now for several days. Our reporter earlier said basically it is taking place throughout the day and throughout the night. Again, you're looking at these live images coming out of the Gaza Strip, where just recently, just a couple of minutes or even less, it's obvious that there has been another missile attack. Well, let's cross over now to Gaza, joined by journalist and filmmaker, Mr. Harry Fear. Thank you so much for being with us. As we're looking at these live images, and you know, sometimes when we're standing in the studio or sitting in the studio and we're just looking at these images and seeing more smoke go up. But when we're talking about a place like Gaza, for the most part, every time we see something like that and the results of that smoke, we're talking about most likely a casualty because of how densely populated Gaza is. Tell me what it's like. You're in Gaza right now. Tell me overall, what's the situation like?
Well, I think the first thing that I want to say is that I think the whole of humanity has to understand that this is a totally insane situation. The previous war in Gaza was insane enough, with over 100 Palestinians being killed and just a few Israelis being killed. The previous war in winter 2008-9 was incredible in violence in itself, with 100 times as many Palestinians being killed as Israelis. But this time, no Israelis have been killed, and over 130 Palestinians have been killed, many of those women and children. And it is an absolute stain on humanity, and it's an absolute shock. And in the most basic sense of reality here, the situation is appalling. For the civilian population, it's terrorizing. Every single population center of the Gaza Strip is experiencing bombardment. And it continues throughout the day. Of course, it's bloodier at night. And the world has to put a stop to this.
Okay, you said the world has to put a stop to it, and humanity should be outraged by what is taking place. As you said, it's not the first time that has happened, and we saw that basically nothing happened to Israel as a result of the assaults in 2008, 2009. So what does humanity, what can be done, what should be done, basically, that reaction that you're saying that everyone should be outraged, we can reach that point. What needs to be done?
Well, what needs to be done won't happen, but what might happen, and which could be positive in trying to bring a close to this as soon as possible, would be that perhaps European states would increase their amplitude of criticism of Israel. The United States, I don't think anyone in the world will rely on the United States to try and restrain Israel's operations, including this one. But I think that perhaps with the European states there is at least a hope that that might happen. But Israel's Prime Minister has said that he's not interested in listening to world criticism. And that means that basically he's put a hand in the face of European states. which have these European states been, generally speaking, balanced in their criticism. But over time, in the coming days, that, I believe, will become more against Israel than the Palestinian groups here in Gaza. Still, no Israelis have been killed. I mean, it's the most shockingly black and white situation.
Of course, we do have reports now that one Israeli soldier has been killed north of the Gaza Strip. So that's our latest news that we're getting. But we're seeing also, we heard Moshe Yaalon basically saying that the attacks are going to continue for at least several days. What does it say? There seems to be an arrogance about the Israeli government leaders. Basically, that when the world or part of the world is really in outrage to what is happening, it appears that there's a callous, very callous attitude that we don't care. We basically don't care what the rest of the world says. You talked about the Europeans and possibly getting involved. Is this not a slap in the face to governments that say they believe in democracy, believe in human rights, to basically say nothing as Tel Aviv continues to do whatever they want, what appears to be in a quite arrogant manner?
Well, indeed, arrogant certainly isn't an exaggeration, and I accept your note there that indeed no Israeli civilians have been killed, but the whole point of this operation is to protect Israeli civilians, and none have yet been killed, whereas dozens of Palestinian civilians have been killed. Well, the point here is that Israel has, it firmly believes, an entirely righteous position. It's defending itself from terror attacks, from rockets that have killed Israeli civilians. This is the line. Now, if you bring that to the Europeans and you bring that to the international community, you bring that to the USA, those states can't disagree with Israel's policy because these states, the US, the UK, have committed far more extraordinary crimes. Look at the Iraq War, for example. There never even were any WMDs, which was the pretext. In this context, there certainly are rockets coming from Gaza, and there is a history of Israeli casualty as a result. So Israel is entirely self-righteous in its position. And I think it firmly believes, and Israeli leaders and the political pundits from left to right firmly believe that they can continue and that they have righteousness on their side. And I think that's very dangerous. It's almost like religious fundamentalism. It's a sort of diplomatic or military or political purism or fundamentalism. And Israel is therefore willing to, just this second, the Israeli Navy is bombarding probably the north of the Gaza Strip. I can hear these attacks continuing in broad daylight. And this is because of, as I say, the Israeli state's self-righteousness.
Thank you so much for being with us here, for your journalist and filmmaker out of Gaza.